Okay, hello everyone. Sahili here from Classify Operations. Welcome to the third edition of Classify Expert Exchange Forum. We are thrilled to carry forward the success of this event, which brings together exceptional, speakers and a vibrant community of talented educators together. Classify is a New Zealand-based company. Some of you are already familiar with our product, our solution, our features. But those who are newly joining us today, for them, we are based in New Zealand and aiming to create a global community for educators and learners to share their knowledge and experiences. With us, you can create your unit plan and tasks more easily and customize your template with accurate content recommendations. Our platform functions include interactive slide, customized templates, various learning functions, managing classroom, co-teach, instant feedback, and many more. Now, moving on to the issuance of certificates for the session. The certificate of attendance will be issued to those attending the live session uninterrupted until the end. The feedback form I will send to the chat box during the event only. You need to complete and submit it to get the certificate. We take 14 working days to issue certificates. Now, please understand that this workshop is structured into two parts. In today's session, we will delve into teaching conceptual understanding in the MYP, focusing on the key elements of the concept and their practical application in planning and comprehension. The next session, scheduled for January 19th, will take a deeper dive into possible integrations with individual and societies through the lens of conceptual understanding. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our workshop facilitator, Mr. Masin, joining us from the Democratic Republic of Congo, with over a decade of
Ewa, czy
invaluable
ty coś
experience.
robisz?
Sorry, who is that? Okay, I request everyone to just be on mute until I complete the introduction. And then in case you have anything to ask, please drop it in the chat box. I will attend them shortly. So Mr. Masin joining us from the Democratic Republic of Congo with over a decade of invaluable experience as an IB educator. Mr. Masin currently serves both as MYP and DP coordinator, playing a pivotal role in shaping and advancing holistic education within his institution. Originally trained as a cognitive scientist and educator, Mr. Marcin brings a profound understanding of the mind and brain into his teaching practice. Beyond his classroom contribution, Mr. Marcin has distinguished himself as a certified examiner, reviewer, and pedagogical leader, embodying excellence in every aspect of his educational journey. So please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. Marcin to our workshop. Mr. Marcin, over to you.
Thank you very much. And good day, morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And next week, we are going to talk about conceptual understanding. Before we start, one technical note on my side. As you already know, I'm in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a place not well known for good and reliable internet and for good and reliable electricity. So it may appear that I have a power cut or internet cut on the way. Please bear with me for a couple of minutes in that case until I come back. And should something really bad happen, we will have to continue this session and reschedule it. Hopefully, however, this is not going to happen, and we will just be able to talk today. So without further ado, teaching for conceptual understanding for today. I don't, can we have, yep. So plan for today. We are going to talk about few things. The biggest one is the concepts themselves. The idea of concepts is a big one, and there are various definitions that you can see in IB, in different literature. So we're going to walk through this and talk about what concepts really are. Luckily, cognitive science helps a little bit here. So we're going to dive into what cognitive science tells us about concepts, different types and levels of conceptual understanding. And finally, if we have time, and I do expect we will, there will be a Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions as we go, just type them in the chat. I will be making stops on the way to address any questions that you may be having. So, moving forward to our first thing, what are concepts? And before we get into what the literature says, I know that there are multiple understandings, and I know that each one of you probably heard or read or is familiar with that topic to some extent. So I'm going to bring in first the definition from Lynn Erickson and from what the IB tells us, and then we're going to unpack it slightly further. So, according to Lynn Erickson, who is the creator of the concept-based learning, and whose definition is the most widely accepted in the IB, concepts are broad, abstract, and timeless ideas that can be used for both teaching, learning, and curriculum organization. IB uses concepts in the MYP as curriculum organizers, in the PYP as the main heart of their curriculum, and and in a DP. So on all those levels, but on each level, concepts mean something slightly different. So unpacking what is the broad, abstract, and timeless. By broad, we understand here that the ideas need to be applied to many topics, many subjects, and many situations. By abstract, we mean that they focus on intangible things, or rather ideas that are difficult to touch, difficult to grasp without using metaphors. And finally, timeless. And this is a little bit confusing because it talks about time, but really what it is, it means that the concepts are applicable to different situations, okay, and can be applied over and over again. In this definition, concepts are based for transfer of learning, and whole idea of transfer is based on taking a concept and applying it again in new situation and in new circumstances. This understanding, as you can see, the definition comes from 2008. IB has adopted concept-based learning in 2012, following Lynn Erickson's position paper about concept-based learning and three-dimensional curriculum. This position paper, by the way, is still available on my IB. I strongly recommend everyone to read it. If there will be interest, I can share the link to it after the session. So since adoption of concept-based learning, especially in the MYP next chapter, so the current iteration of the MYP has been very explicit about making the program concept-based. And that led to certain teaching practices in the MYP. And those practices are something that I want to stop for a minute before we move on to the following, to unpacking the concepts through various lenses. Can we have the next slide, please? So MYP has, by practice, because none of those things are really prescribed too much, but by teaching practice of various educators around the world and conversations and kind of just a common sense usage, air quotes, we ended up with a couple of things that are important. So first teaching practice that became very frequent and almost equalized with what MYP is that you are supposed to explicitly teach concepts. So if you're an INS teacher, you are supposed to explicitly teach about systems or global interactions or change. If you're a science teacher, you're supposed to teach systems again, or balance. Or if you're a math teacher, you're supposed to teach about logic, right? All those concepts are supposed to be explicitly taught in and delivered in classroom. And the main vehicle by which they are delivered are the statements of inquiry. And statement of inquiry is my personal pet peeve, because what happens in a statement of inquiry is you take the key concept, you take the related concept or related concepts, and the global contexts, and form them into a sentence that is supposedly encapsulating your whole unit. And that this statement of inquiry has to be everywhere. It has to be on your board. It has to be the first thing you tell your students. It has to be unpacked. It has to be regularly referred in the classroom, and so on and so forth, which is, by the way, very anti-pedagogical. But I'll get to that when we talk about conceptual understanding. And then the next thing is, please come back. That then the whole notion of key and related concepts is something that MYP has brought us in from Erickson's. Erickson calls those micro and macro concepts, key concepts and related concepts in the MYP. The key concepts are supposed to give the breadth of learning and help us in transferring the ideas, while related concepts are supposed to give the depth of learning and facilitate the deeper understanding of the subjects. And something that came across through teaching practice is the notion that teaching concepts is more important than teaching content. And I'm sure all of you, if you have taught MYP for more than a day, have met those four teaching principles related to concept-based learning. So before we move on, I want to say that they are wrong, and they're actually not supported neither by the IB nor by what we know about the concepts. And during the rest of the presentation, I will be debunking those ideas as we move on. So first things first, I want to dig a little deeper into what concept really is and why we cannot really explicitly teach it by looking into cognitive science. So cognitive science is a multidisciplinary field of knowledge consisting of philosophy, psychology, linguistics, neuroscience, and artificial intelligence studies. That's for those of you who may not have too much connection with it. And as it happens, cognitive linguistics and cognitive psychology have done incredible, vast research into what is concept, how it works, and what it is and it is not. So before we move from here, we are going to do a small activity here. Can I ask you to write in the chat what you think is the best example of bird? Give me the type of bird that you think is the best example of bird.
Marcin, we have responses coming into the chat.
Yes, yes, I'm waiting just a half a minute more to get all the
Sure.
responses. It's great. I see various responses: falcons, eagles, peacock, parrot, hawk, crow, some repeated ones, raven. Okay, thank you. Thank you all. And why are we doing this activity? Because this is exactly what Eleanor Roche did in 1978 when she came up with the notion of prototype. Most of our knowledge about concepts is based on this notion of prototype. And look what happened. I asked you for what is the best, the most bird among birds. And most of you gave different answers. So does that mean that we don't have the best example, or that means that we have many good examples, or what does that mean? So, and how is that related to concepts? You're probably asking yourself. So the notion of prototype is very close to what concept is. It's a notion that every category and every idea and everything has its idealized member that features the best example of this category. And that's a concept. That's a concept. So the concept, the whole work on concepts that Roche did later on based on the idea of prototype. But as you see, each one of you has a different prototype in your head. So in order to get a prototype, so there is no one universal prototype. There are more prototypes, and each one of us has it slightly different. And the same with concepts. When I say that we are going to study about systems, then each one of you will have slightly different system in mind. That is huge because that means we will not teach concept as much as we will teach examples of this concept in the real world and then try to generalize on the whole category and what it is. So the order is quite reverse. It's not you're teaching concept first and then you're teaching content, but you're teaching the examples and then generalizing them back into the concepts. Hopefully that making sense. But that prevents us from teaching concepts too explicitly. Then I talked about key and related concepts. And this, again, merges into the cognitive science through basic level terms. So without getting too much of the cognitive theory, I can give you the references. Different ideas have different level of importance in our mind. Some of them are more important than others. And the IB tells us that through concepts, we are getting into the more abstract ideas. That is true. But what they are not showing is that concepts are what we call supra-ordinate level terms. And we need basic level terms that will actually help us to build on them. And those basic level terms in Lynn Erickson's work are the micro concepts. The IB tells us, yes, those are, but we do have related concepts. Can we move to the next slide? Yes, we do have related concepts, right? So, of course, the key concepts are the broader, more abstract concepts, while the related concepts are those that discipline specific and narrower concepts. And where key concepts help us to get the breadth of learning, the related concepts will give us the depth of learning. And the related concepts will help us to build the disciplinary grounding, while the key concepts will help to facilitate transfer. So, Marcin, what are you actually arguing about? Well, what I'm arguing about is the problem with related concepts. Next slide, please. And that problem is that there is no real hierarchy between the key concepts and related concepts. If you open your guide, for example, INS, you will see that systems is a key concept, which is fine. But at the same time, you will see that power is a related concept. And I'm asking and I'm challenging each and every one of you to tell me how power is more specific and more specific to humanities than systems. Because every study, every paper, everything that I read puts those two as big abstract ideas. So that means that there is a layer missing. And this is a layer we're going to talk about next week. That layer is the layer of micro concepts, the ones that will be really subject specific and will really drive your learning. Such subject specific concept that you could use in INS could be demand, or could be monarchy, right? Or could be democracy, or could be landform. Those concepts, while still abstract, allow you to create the depth of understanding, an actual disciplinary grounding. So that's a conversation for next week. I just wanted to highlight what is happening there. So we have established so far that the concepts are based on the prototypes, and that key and related concepts still need another layer. Now we're going to look back into how the concepts are acquired, which is the explicit teaching of concepts. So concepts are acquired, unlike something that is a common teaching practice, are acquired through multiple examples and multiple exposures. And you need multiple good examples of a concept for your students to actually learn it. What does that mean? Well, most of us will do a single case study in our unit. If we are really squeezing it, we may be doing 2 case studies in a unit. That's particularly visible in the INS, but also in other subjects. So, for example, in sciences, you're talking about systems, and you're going to do cell, right? And cell as a system. Great. But that's not enough. According to the research, we need between 3 and 5 good examples of a concept to actually acquire that concept. So that means that in our unit, we should have probably 3, 4 different case studies on the same key concept in order to provide sufficient exposure for students to be able to generalize. So sticking with my science example, if you want to talk about systems in human body, you, before your students start figuring out what system really means, you need to have 3, 4, 5 systems. So that means in a single unit, you will be teaching the respiratory system, the circular system, the skeletal system, the muscle system, and only then you can generalize and say, okay, so what is a system? What common ideas are there among different elements of our body? Can we move to the next slide? Because I probably already went into that. Uh, yes. So not only you need to have multiple good case studies, but also you need to have cases that are good example of your concept, good example of your category. For example, in INS, one of the typical topics are empires, right? So we study different empires. So if I would like to teach my student about empires, I would teach them about the British Empire. I would teach them about the Roman Empire. I would perhaps teach them about the Spanish colonial empire. Um, but then many teachers would also teach about Genghis Khan and the Mongolian Empire. And this is a borderline case because while it was huge, it could be really debated whether it is or is not an empire, right? So that last case would be a very borderline case of empires. So what does that mean? That means that your students are not getting a good mental idea of what is empire. Um, Instead, they are trying to attribute a borderline fringe case into what they think is the core of a concept. So that is my advice to avoid while putting together the concepts. So the third thing that all of this implies for our teaching practice is direct teaching of concepts, which I already talked about. And the basic idea is staying the same. Concepts are not really taught directly. The cases are taught directly. And then when it comes to concepts, they are formed as a reflection on the cases, their commonalities, and their features. So it means we need to plan in a different way. We don't start our units with concepts and inquire about them. We start our units with case studies and we inquire into case studies and we end up with a reflection and generalization to get to concepts and to get to conceptual understanding. And then final implication for teaching practice is the transfer. So again, if we're teaching concepts directly, we're saying, okay, so how do you take this into a different case? Well, we should be asking differently. What are the similarities between those cases? Do you see the same concept in those cases? I guess that transfer remains a big and elusive topic that I'm not an expert. And I will be very frank with you. If you want to hear about transfer, read or listen to Julie Stern. She's the master there. But the penny that I want to put there is that transfer basis is based on having the concept already formed rather than transferring content. Can we move on to the next point, which is the conceptual understanding? So there are a lot of misconceptions about conceptual understandings, and I'm going to address probably two of them only. One of them is what even is statement of inquiry and statement of conceptual understanding. Are those two the same things? Yes, they are. Statement of inquiry is a special form of conceptual understanding. And conceptual understanding is just a fancy term for what is the relationship between the two concepts. Now, the idea in conceptual understanding is that you need to make connections between concepts, but also connections between situations. So your statement of inquiry may be changes in power, change functioning of systems, right? So key concept and related concept. Uh, but what really is important is that relationship between power and systems. And in this case that I just mentioned, so changes in power changes systems, it's a one direction relationship. Power changes systems. Systems do not change power, right? This kind of understanding is the end goal of conceptual understanding. The end goal is to make connection between the two concepts and find how they are related, what's the interplay between them, and how case studies that we're teaching can change or can be reapplied to a new situation. So what does that mean for our classroom practice? What are the teaching implications of conceptual understanding? Can I have the next slide, please? So that that means that to have conceptual understandings, you need to, again, have multiple examples of concepts interacting. So I don't know if you see the pattern by now, but it looks like we are just not putting enough examples. One case study can be the greatest case study in the world, but it still remains only one. If you have 5 case studies, you are there to see patterns. And if you want to have conceptual understanding, you need to have multiple case studies of multiple concepts. Yes, that means that wanting that if you put 3 concepts in a unit, you need to have 15 case studies. Oh my God, that sounds like a lot. Probably this is what most of you thought right now. And that's true. And this is why I will encourage all of you to reduce the number of concepts you are focusing at one go. With 2 concepts, you are looking at 5 to 6 case studies uh, in one unit. That's a lot. That is really a lot. I don't know how are your units, but I tell my team that their units should be 6 to 8 weeks. So if you have 6 case studies and 6, 7 weeks, that's a case study a week. That's incredibly fast paced um, teaching. The time frames for content are limited, exactly. So if you take less concepts, you are getting better chances of actually building any conceptual understanding. And then let's not forget that if you take multiple good case studies of the same concept, students will see the similarities, they will see the patterns, so you will not start from the scratch, moving from case study to case study is not completely starting from the scratch. You need to highlight what is important. But that also may mean that you're chunking much more. You cannot teach everything about Roman Empire and everything about British Empire and everything about the Imperial China in a single unit. But if you're talking about technological innovations in each of the 3 empires, you have a decent chance of actually going through major technological advancements in Roman Empire in a week, and the most important innovations in technology in Imperial China in a week. So very careful planning for multiple examples. So that's one big implication. Second big implication is make connections clear, make them absurdly clear. If your 6-year-old can see the connection, it's probably good enough to put it to your high school students. And I'm very serious about it. Kids are not good in seeing abstract connections. Our brains develop abstract thinking capacity very, very late. Make sure that the connection is obvious if you want to make sure that your students can get those on your own. And finally, build on subject-specific micro-concepts. This is something I'm going to talk a lot next week, and I'm going to show you how to build micro-concepts in the INS, but go beyond what IB is prescribing. IB is great, and I'm a big supporter of the program, but MYP, with all the iterations that it's taking, even with the enhancing the MYP, is still not complete teaching and learning method. You need to go above and beyond and fill the gaps where the IB didn't do that. We are going to try to fill the gaps for INS next week. And if you will enjoy the INS session, maybe Class P will decide to bring us more of those for other subjects, which we could do in collaboration with other subject experts. So with that note, I would like to open the floor for questions. We have very good time, so please start putting your questions. My school usually applies one key concept and two, three related concepts. Is it the right application, or could you shed more light on this and what the IB requires? So, IB requires you to have one key concept and one or more related concepts. As I talked about number of concepts and required case studies, it is correct. There is nothing wrong with it, but my recommendation will be reduce the related concepts. One key concept and one related concept is more than enough. It will actually make your life easier, your planning easier, and your unit more meaningful because you have it more focused. With four concepts, your unit starts to be about everything. Hopefully that answers your question, Philip.
Hi, Martin.
Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Glad to hear you again.
Yes. Um, would you be able to share some case studies from sciences?
Yes, I think I shared one today when I was talking about body organs, right? Um, and how do we create the notion of systems? What's what are the case studies you are looking for, Jyoti? Of
Some,
conceptual understandings
yeah,
of
yeah.
concept
How
acquisition?
in INS you would have under the conceptual study you would have case studies. In sciences, I not aware of how to go about a case study science based with the concept in mind.
Okay, so for example, you are yeah, the body organs are exactly that type of
Okay.
case study, right? So concept system, case study respiratory system, case study circulatory system,
Mm.
right?
So you're talking about doing the whole content with, for example, the different systems as a case
Yes,
study. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Fair enough.
I don't remember science concepts off the top of my head. So if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
drop me some more key related concepts, I'll try to give you more examples.
No, no, I got it. That you are talking about standalone when you're doing a unit with a system in mind in sciences. It can be considered as a case study.
Yes,
So, yeah.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How things, Congo?
Good, although unstable. We almost missed webinar today because of lack of electricity.
Oh, God. Yeah. God bless. Things will work out. Yeah. Mm. Okay, dear. Thank you so much. Happy New Year once
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions?
If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We will keep the session open for next 5 minutes. And also note, I have sent the feedback form link to the chat. Please fill up and submit it to mark your attendance, because that will help us to issue certificates for you all. So please do that. And meanwhile, if you have anything to ask or you want any suggestions, any observations that you would like to discuss, please drop them in chat, or you can unmute and ask as well. Anything is fine.
Really, I'm having issues logging on to the chat. Would you be able to send me
Okay.
the feedback form in the group chat individually?
Yeah, I'll try to send you that. Yeah.
Thank you. Regards.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, could you please send me the group chat? I was getting out from the link then and then because I don't know, some unstable internet, I guess.
I'm sending it again in the Zoom chat. Yeah. Please check.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Marcin, I think we don't have any more questions to attend. So in that case, I'll keep the meeting open for another 5 minutes for them to complete the feedback form and submit. And then I close the meeting. Thank you so much, Marcin, for joining and enlightening us with the conceptual process, and wish you good evening. Oh, sorry, it's
Thank
day for you
you.
already. Yeah,
Thank you very much
okay.
for having me. And I hope to see you again next week for a little bit more practical session on how to apply all of what we said into INS.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you and
Thank you
bye
so
for
much.
now.
Thank
Bye.
you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marcin. Thank you, class side.